Welcome to Connecting Jewish Grandparents, the Grand Plan podcast, a space for Jewish grandparents who want to build deeper, more meaningful connections with their grandchildren. Or maybe you're an in-betweener like me, somebody who sees the value of connecting their parents to their children in meaningful and productive ways. I am Sharona Hassan, the founder of Grand Plan, and I'm here to help you share your love and your values and your presence in ways that your grandchildren will carry for a lifetime. We are here to build joyous Jewish legacies. So whether you're next door or across the ocean, you are in the right place. Welcome. I hope that today you will learn something that helps you to be the grandparent you want to be. I'm thrilled that you're on this journey with me today, and I hope you can rate and review and share with others. Hopefully you were able to join me last week for Parashat Pinchas, where we looked at inheritance and what you are going to be transmitting, how that happens for you. I hope you listened in general because, well, it was episode 50 and it was pretty exciting, and Parashat Pinchas is so geared to grandparents and what they're doing. But if you didn't, it's not too late. Yet it really is so much for the basis of what happens in this week's double portion of Matot-Masei. It is not coincidental ever how the parshiot line up, what happens when. And so this week really is an important building layer upon what happened last week. Because yes, we looked at what is transmitted, how it's transmitted. We looked at 5 different scenarios lined up in Parashat Pinchas of when things are transmitted in different ways. And every generation holds the inheritance that it received from the generation before. So whatever you are holding right now, how are you holding it? What are you doing with it? How are you stewarding your own inheritance so that it is ready to be transmitted to the next generation? How are you living that legacy so that you can leave that legacy well? So the word I used just a second ago was stewardship. And if I'm really honest, I don't use the word stewardship very often conversationally. It's kind of like the word capstone. It only shows up in academic achievements. It's one of those words I use on report cards, but don't use conversationally. So when there's a word that I come across that I don't feel very confident in using, I like to look at the Hebrew. You'd think well, Sharona is mother tongue English. Why the Hebrew? How is another language going to help her understand English better? But come on, we're here every week to look at how the Torah helps us understand our own lives better. So obviously, it can help us understand language more as well. So the word stewardship in Hebrew, it is based on the shorish, on the root word seder. Now, if you're not somebody using Hebrew regularly, then when I say seder, probably the first thing you think of is matzah and Pesach and Seder night. But the word seder means organize, order. That's why it's the Pesach meal name. But it's how do we organize, hold, make a plan for? That's stewardship. It's also Pesach night. And it's also the root word of Siddur, of our prayer book. And I love that the idea of stewardship in Hebrew ties to both of those. Because if we're looking at how we hold this legacy, this inheritance in our own lives that we received from our grandparents, from the generations before us, then Pesach and prayer, I mean, come on. There's such a big piece of it. So to me, it's a good way to start our look at this double portion of Matot and Maaseh. And again, our big question is, we've received our inheritance. We're living with our inheritance. How do we steward, protect, guard, and live our inheritance so that the next generation is able to hold it and appreciate it, hopefully as much, maybe even more than we currently do? I said it's a double portion, Matot and Maaseh. It's interesting, Matot begins with a look at taking vows. And if a woman takes a vow and there's no, and who hears her and who doesn't, and does this then apply to her life? Now, truth is, maybe you've noticed, I kind of have this undercurrent theme of what role do women play and feminism, and I don't let it overpower. But usually when I look at the section, I'm like, I don't really want to go into it because it feels so not feminist. But it really does align beautifully and clearly with stewardship. How are you taking responsibility for the words that either you make or you hear someone else make? It's such a big piece of our stewardship, of our relationship with others, with community, of how if you hear somebody say something that they shouldn't be saying, how do you help them and protect them and steward their relationship with their words, their actions, the people around them? So that's how we will kick it off, by looking at that piece of stewardship, because that's how the Torah decided to begin. I'm going to pick it up a little bit later in the Torah portion, where they're preparing to enter the land. They're not going to yet. Doesn't happen at all in the Torah if you don't know. Spoiler alert. But before they go in, 2.5 of the 12 tribes look around and say, wait, the land right here outside of Israel, we like this land. Look at how fertile this land is. We would like to stay here for the sake of our animals and our kids. Now, the commentators really dig into this one and say, like, why does Reuven and Gad and Chetzi Menashe, why would they say animals before kids? Why would they make that priority? But look, that's the choice they made. And that is a part of stewardship that is really important. They're saying we value our horticulture, we value our livestock, and we value our families. And these are part of our inheritance that we want to live and we want to transmit. And who are we, wherever we are in the world, to say, no, they were wrong? How? Because we do want to give great wealth to the generations after us. We want them to be living in fertile lands with joy and wealth in their families. And we want to be stewarding that for them. But Moshe says, sure, except it's not just about taking care of the land and the wealth. You also must provide stewardship for the rest of the nation. So again, I think this is a really important piece to look at how we're living our lives, how we are balancing our values of how we live to what we're going to give to the next generation. So we can say, look, I have this financial wealth and I have stewarded and I've guarded it and I have invested it. And this is what I want to give to my future generations. And wow, I am so happy for you that you have that. But what Moshe is coming in to say, before you even have it, you have to look at your brethren. You have to protect them first. So before you live your best life here outside of the land, You have to go and take care of your brethren in the land. You have to go and help them fight their battles, because no matter how much wealth or how good of a life you have your nation and your people first. And that is what you must do before you settle up and say, this is home. Stewardship is not just about wealth. It's about people. It's about community. It's about the people around you. You already knew that before I said it, but somehow, sometimes, we forget. It slips away. And when the tribes hear that, they say, okay, lo nashuv, we will not return to our homes until the rest of our nation are in possession of their portion. Okay? We can't just look after ourselves. Everyone is involved. We help others. That is such an important piece of what we are stewarding and what we have to be modeling for our descendants. Because it can't just be for the now. It's for the always. And if you were to think about it, you know where you saw it in the generations before you. Maybe not everybody did it well. We all come from mixed families with a variety of personalities, but you know where it is, and you know how you value it, and you know how to live that and show that, even if you didn't see your ancestors doing it as much as they could or should. And that's what they commit to. And that's what they do. But that is, of course, not where the Torah portion ends. That's still in Matot. And then we come into Maaseh. And we are preparing and getting ready for the journey. I need to pause here for a second because I just said journey and I wasn't explaining it well yet. All right? The journey is not one step. The 48 journeys that Bnei Israel were on is now going to be outlined in Maaseh. And that is another piece of the stewardship. So you'll be able to look at where you've been, where your journey has been, and maybe geographically, you've lived your whole life in one location, and maybe it's been a meandering of place from here to there, and then maybe you served in the military, and maybe you went to university, and maybe you did wherever your journey took you. Amazing. That's part of what you were stewarding your own inheritance on that journey, and it adds to your experiential wealth that you are able to transmit as well. From the recipes that you learned along the way to the wealth that you accrued, whatever that is, that was your own journey and your own stewardship. And it's crucial to reflect upon that. And that's what's happening in Maaseh. They go through all of the journeys that they took from the Exodus onward. And every one of them is recounted because that's such an enormous part of knowing where you've been to know where you're going next. Now the Torah portion, I said the double, ends with another thing. I mentioned the feminism and how I try to look away from it, and that when I put it in the context of stewardship, it not only becomes palatable, it feels right. Last week, I spoke about Benot Zelofchad, these 5 daughters, 5 sisters who say to Moshe, what about us? We love the land of Israel. Don't we get a spot in it too? We don't have any brothers. That land should be ours too. And Moshe went and spoke to the Almighty, who said, the girls are right. They deserve their land. And I always like how that feels and how that goes. And yet, The end of this Torah portion is the continuation of that, which says, the daughters of Zelophehad have to marry within their tribe. They don't get to choose whoever they want as a spouse. The land has to stay within their shevet, within their family, and so they're going to have to marry not too distant relatives. And as I said, that always kind of rubbed me the wrong way, except through the lenses of stewardship. It's two truths at the same time. The girls love and value and deserve a place in the land, and the inheritance of the family needs to stay in the family. It can't go away too far because that is part of the inheritance that we cherish and that we want to give to our family and not let it get too far away. It says in the Torah directly, I'm saying it in my own words, but just in translation, no inheritance of Bnei Israel may pass over from one shevet to the other, because each of them must remain bound to the portion of their shevet. What is in your family needs to stay in your family. It says it again a little differently, a few psukim later. It needs to stay where it was, and it needs to be cherished by the people from who it comes from. And that is really then how the whole book of Bamidbar ends. It ends on what I previously tried to ignore, that the daughters of Tzlopcha don't really get to choose their spouse, to the Torah saying outright, your inheritance is so valuable, you need to protect it and cherish it and be intentional in the transmission of it. Stewardship doesn't use the word, but that is what it's saying. These are the mitzvot and the mishpatim that Hashem has commanded us. These are the closing words of the whole book of Bamidbar. And then, in Ashkenazic congregations, the congregation stands up together after these words are read, and they say, Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. May you be strong, you are strong, and may you be strengthened. And these three words together epitomizes, articulates, I'm not even sure the right adjective of the three generations of transmission that you're always in. What you received from your parents and what you are holding in your own life and what will be transmitted to your children. And then said differently, what you, the grandparent, holds that you transmitted to your children, that they will transmit to your grandchildren, and what that means, so what you received, what you hold, what you transmit, and how it will be strengthening the future generations. Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. I hope that listening to today's episode helped you feel strengthened in what it means to protect your inheritance in your life long before you're ready to transmit it. We're not near 120 yet. So how you are able to hold it, value it, treasure it long before it gets passed on without you. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please rate, review, and share. And if you don't get my weekly emails, there I look at what I talk about here more succinctly because it's written text. And I share 3 ways that you can embody this, make this actionable through joyful, intentional connection. Because that's what all grandparents want to be doing. And that's the goal of Grand Plan. So if you want more information about Grand Plan, look in the show notes, grandplan.pro. Spread the message. Enjoy. Thank you for listening to episode 51.